Let's just focus on the last 6 years. The level of planting and leaking from other members of the family means that, in my mind, they have written countless books. Certainly millions of words have been dedicated to trying to trash my wife and myself, to the point of where I had to leave my country. At that time, I didn't fully understand how much or how complicit the family were in that pain.
The privacy of your most nearest and dearest without permission. That'll be the accusation, right?
That'll be the accusation from the people that don't understand or haven't or don't want to believe that my family have been briefing the press solidly for well over a decade.
I work in newsrooms. It's a fact that every anti-Harry and Meghan story comes from Kensington Palace. But why?
Much of the negativity towards the couple is coming from within the royal family. The royal family and staff of the royal family are the ones that are very often leaking these stories to the press.
I mean, they can deny it all they like till they're blue in the face, but there's been an awful lot of leaking, particularly from Kensington Palace.
I was told I could say what I want about Harry and Meghan, but I had to lay off William and Kate. That was the instruction from the editor.
The palace has a history of swapping stories. So if I am a reporter and I come to the palace and I say, I've got this pretty scandalous headline about William, the palace would swap out that story for a story about Harry. They'd say, I'm going to give you this story about Harry if you'll kill this William story. So this has been going on literally for 20 years or so. Harry has been a victim of this forever. What we do know is that it's a PR strategy that the palace has done for decades. The palace absolutely has to paint Kate in the perfect light. And if that means running over Meghan Markle, to them, it's justified. Kate is going to be queen one day. So they're doing everything in their power to keep her innocent and pure.
The royal family manipulate the media. I'm talking about the print media, the British print media, in a way you simply would not believe. So, for example, in the mainstream press, it is verboten to write a piece in support of Meghan and Harry. It is an absolute dictum, spoken and unspoken, that the newspapers do not want and will not print pieces that are wholly positive to Meghan and Harry, and you cannot write anything negative really about William or Kate. This is because of the deals that have been done between the palace and the editors of these papers. Okay. If you look at the Telegraph Act, you will see 4 or 5 pieces in absolute eulogizing praise of the Princess of Wales. And then the chances are on the same day, every piece about Meghan and Harry is negative. They literally take a baseball bat and bash this couple to pieces. The books that I've written about the monarchy is that the reason the British monarchy has survived and prospered when other European monarchies has failed is they are utterly ruthless, and their absolute goal is you have to have the spotlight on the monarch and the heir, and anybody else who comes into the picture and takes too much of the oxygen or too much of the limelight, you see, is pushed out. We saw it with Diana, we saw it with Fergie, we've seen it with Harry and Meghan. They were too threatening as a unit to Kate and William. The tide turned, and I believe, Harry, that was instigated from within the palace. And you cannot fight the palace narrative. Nothing is leaked without the nod from the principals. For example, the Tightgate story. What's interesting is nobody came out from the palace and backed Meghan's story, and yet they came out and they backed Kate's story. What I think there's a deeper meaning and a deeper context, which is there is definitely no question in the British press an absolute movement to discredit Harry and Meghan and the need to bolster William and Kate, and they have to be sanctified in the press, and they are these saints. I really do feel that Harry was absolutely on the money when he said we had to leave, because once this tsunami of bad press comes against you, it is very, very difficult to rise above that. She is being discredited by the establishment. She is being discredited by the broadsheet press in this country. She hasn't really been given a chance, and it became so toxic for them. I think that they could not access the truth. Harry absolutely knew that, you know, the palace were leaking stories about them, that the narrative had to be, you know, to discredit them in order to refocus the spotlight on William and Kate, that there was an envy after their successful foreign tours. They had star quality as a couple, just as Diana did.
Journalist about how the media inflames this. I was called by the Sun newspaper. If you don't know what the Sun is, it's sort of
got the topless girl on page 3. That's all you need to know.
And they called me about a month ago to ask if I'd write about how Meghan was like Wallace and how Meghan was going to destroy the royal family and the arguments between Meghan and Kate. And I said, I'm really sorry, I'm just not privy to all of this. I don't think I could do it. And the commissioning editor was really twisting my arm to write this article and say, but you could say, couldn't you, that X happened, and you could say that she's fired all her staff, and you could say that Kate has said this. And I said, well, I'm really sorry, I don't know that, I can't do it. And this conversation went on for about half an hour, and I didn't write the article, but it just gives you an insight into how this whole thing is being, you know, the flames are being fanned by the media.
William and Kate are very well respected. They make rounds of the people, and loads more people would rather see him instantly step to the throne than Charles.
Or are they just better at hiding the truth? Because there are some quite fruity stories about William too, if you want them.
Really?
Yes, not that we can go into detail here, obviously.
Oh.
Hello, lawyers.
I don't know. Always fruity stories.
You know, there are very fruity stories about that. But this is not a battle. It's not a comparison.
Let's move on. We've done enough Harry and Meghan bashing.
Although, you know, my job is to report on the royals and to be, you know, sometimes part of their PR spin and be positive about them.
The fact is that the royal family does have a huge amount of power over the British press in this country. And if you ever want any kind of ongoing relationship with the royals, which obviously everybody does, then if you are the one who goes straight over the top and broadcasts something, especially something deeply personal, then you are going to be excommunicated from the royal pool, as it were.
Have you heard from anyone in the palace thanking you for the, you know, serious defense of them?
I've had some messages communicated to me on behalf of several members of the royal family.
Upper level
We're very
people?
grateful that
I was working for the BBC, you know, a very senior royal correspondent at the BBC. I was excluded from parties and events. Piers Morgan was as the editor of the Mirror. David Yellen was as the editor of the Sun. And I used to say to them, why? And why do you plant stories? And they did plant is a strong word. Give stories to the tabloids first. Why did you come to me and I'll broadcast and they can follow me? But that was never the way this worked.
I think that most of the general public would assume that the monarchy are at the mercy of the British press, when the reality is there is a far greater level of manipulation that goes on from the royal courts to the media than Joe Public would ever believe.
The media's reporting of the monarchy is stuck in the 1950s, this kind of deferential lack of critique, lack of partiality. I mean, it's bizarre, really. Lack of impartiality. It's entirely partial and reverential. So I think in that, and the idea that, you know, the media is a kind of PR arm of the royal family.
That, you know, there is a complete identity crisis with the royal family. You know, is it a public institution? Is it a brand? Is it a private family? And we have to work out what it really is. And when it comes to being a public institution, then the transparency and the accountability should be the same as any other. If it's going to be a brand, then let's be clear that we're peddling a myth, an image, a brand, and we don't want to dig under the bonnet of that too much. If they want to be a private family, then you have to step out of you have to step off the stage, because you can't kind of have it all ways. And I sort of come back to this brand idea, which I think, you know, to Tom's point about what is the value of the royal family. If you're going to be a brand ambassador for £65 billion, you know, brand, then you've got to live, as any brand does, with a sort of authenticity and integrity. And I think one of the things that really frustrates me is the mythologizing of the royal family. The fact that there is a sort of fairy tale peddled, which bears no relation to reality, you know, and that we have this sort of, as I called it in the chat, this sort of institutionalized deference that doesn't allow us to ask the right questions and, more importantly, get the right answers. So when it comes to, you know, the sort of the huge interest in Harry and William, we know that there's a whole side of that story that has not been reported by the British media. We know that there are rumours of alleged infidelity on William's part that the UK press just will not touch. And frankly, you know, if Harry has buggered off to Santa Barbara, having been on the receiving end of such extraordinary press coverage while his brother has not received a single critical article in the UK,